everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katrie, and today I'm going to be going through my best books and my worst books of 2023. Now, I feel like I didn't read obviously as much as some other people. Some people are like over 100 books, which like, way to go, you guys. Honestly, like, I don't know how you do it. But I just read 42 books. Pretty good for me. I'm pretty proud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of combine, and I'm just going to rate all of my books, all of the books that I read this year, all 42 from the worst up to the best. I decided to do it this way because I'd rather start out the video kind of salty, you know, and then end, like, gradually get better and get happier and end on a really good note than to like start it on a good note and then slowly get worse and worse and then just end sour and salty. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do it the other way. I'm gonna start with the worst books. So yeah, let's get right on into the video. Okay, so getting into it, the first book that I have on the list, the worst book of the year for me, is The Silent Patient by Alex something. I don't really care enough to know what his last name, honestly, or her last name. I don't know. I don't know if this is a guy or girl author, honestly. I hated this book. I DNF'd it, did not finish it. I did kind of skim through and I read the end. Yeah, I'm gonna try to be brief and short as I can be through this so that this is not like an hour-long video, but that's the worst book of the year for me. And number 41, coming in at the second worst book of the year, I have An Anonymous Girl by Greer Hendricks. I think Hendricks and Sarah something. It's like two people who wrote this book. So both of these books, my top two worst, are psychological thrillers. Apparently I don't like psychological thrillers, and I don't think I'm gonna pick up another one again. It would probably take a lot for me to pick up another one. I don't really know much to say about this plot besides like they have kind of an interesting like psychological like standpoint when you read the premise, but pretty much all they're about is somebody cheats and somebody else goes crazy. There's not a whole lot of plot to either of them, and I hated them. So number 40 is Waiting for Tom Hanks by Kerry Winfrey. This was a 2-star book. This is a rom-com kind of book. It is very much what it sounds like, waiting for Tom Hanks. This girl is obsessed with Tom Hanks and Tom Hanks movies, and so she's literally waiting for a man who can like do what Tom Hanks does in his movies and stuff. This was weird. This had very cute moments in it, but it was to me, it was not structured the best. There was like a plot, and then it kind of like the entire end was just a mess. The entire end was a mess. I don't even know what she was doing, but she did not. It was no wrap up nicely, whatever. No, it was a mess. But this book also was just sprinkled with so much like, oh yeah, I'm gonna throw in this here and this here and this here so that I seem like I'm in with the times. But it had nothing to do with, and it didn't fit into the story because it literally read like it was thrown in just for that reason. So it was annoying. I didn't like that book. All right, number 39, so fourth worst book, is A Separate Peace by John Knowles. This is a little bit of an older one. I'm not sure when this was written. I want to say like 60s or 70s or something like that. I heard people referring to this as a classic. I did not like it. I don't know. This was also another 2 stars, and it was kind of dull and boring to me. And yeah, I felt like reading this, the plot is, if you guys have ever read or know the plot of Looking for Alaska by John Green, it's basically the same thing, but John Green's Looking for Alaska is much better. Much better done. Yeah. Well, it's funny to me because Looking for Alaska is one of my favorite books, and I just didn't like this book. I don't know. I like Phineas is okay, and there's parts of it that I did like enjoy, but it was just like lacking any kind of like substance or anything to make it good to me. So yeah. And number 38, we have The Dork Diaries by Rachel Renee Russell. This is a middle grade book that I read when I was younger, and I read it this year, and it was one of my cringiest reads of the year. I can't believe I liked this book, and I don't know if I will let my children read this book or not. It just has a lot of like toxic gossiping and bullying and just very like immature, and I don't know. I'm like, wow, I read this. I liked this. I don't know if my kids are gonna read this. But yeah, so not one of my better reads for this year. And right after that, at 37, I have The Tale of Emily Winsnap by Liz Kessler. It's another middle grade book that I was checking out for my daughters. This is just a little book about a girl who finds out that she's a mermaid. She's like never been in water, like she showers, and so it doesn't happen until she's submerged in water or something. And then she goes off and she finds her dad and stuff. And that was one aspect of this book that I did like, is it had a strong like family presence and like a good pull of like family structure and like being together as a family and bringing the family together. And I did like that, but it's not one of those middle grade books that is easy if you're not middle grade to read. But it did not have as many problematic things in it as Dork Diaries did, so it's a little bit higher on this list. And then number 36, I have A Guide to the Birds of East Africa by Nicholas Grayson. This was actually a novella, I think, because it's under 200 pages, and this was weird. This was marketed as like a romance book, like a romance literary fiction type of book. And it's basically about I can't remember his name right now, Malik maybe, or Malik or something. This old man who is in love with this woman who is his like bird tour woman. Like, he lives in East Africa, obviously, and she like works at the museum or whatnot, and she gives tours, and he's been like in love with her for however long, and he wants to ask her to this dance. And then this old schoolmate of his comes in and he wants to ask her to this dance, and so they at their club have a competition for who can find the most birds, and whoever finds the most birds basically gets to ask her out. It was weird, it was slow, it wasn't the worst thing ever, but it was weird and it was slow. So not one of my favorite books. I'm pretty sure I put it in my to give away pile because I was like, I'm never going to read this again. So got that one. And then next on this list at number 35 was a disappointment and a surprise, but it is Always and Forever, Laura Jean by Jenny Han. I only gave this one like a 2.75 stars. This is the third and final book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy, which I really loved To All the Boys I Loved Before. The second one I was kind of meh over, and this one, this one I was so mad about. I felt like this one just put so much conflict and frustration in it that did not need to be there. Like, we've already been through things and gone through like so much stuff, and we're still playing on this. There was also a heavy like, Laura had a heavy presence of like, oh, you're this age, you can't know what real love is and all this stuff. And like, everybody in her life is so against like not dating around and dating just to like, you know, like going around having sex with a bunch of people, which I just think is disgusting personally. And that's not a good concept. It's a very toxic concept of, yeah, don't find true love and be in a serious relationship, sleep around. Like, this book had a lot more of that and a lot more bad influence surrounding the cute relationship that it had, I felt like. And it still kind of ended and resolved some stuff, but I feel like it also didn't resolve it well enough for me, because especially since this is a YA series, I'm like, I want to see that resolve. You know, like, young girls reading this, like, you're gonna want to know how to healthily resolve issues like this, and when you just don't show it and you're just like, yeah, we're just cool now, I don't like that. So this was definitely my least favorite in the trilogy, and it's disappointing. I'm still gonna keep it though, because they all go together and they look very nice on my shelf, and I like the first one, and the second one's okay, but I was very disappointed by that book. All right, I don't think I'm going fast enough here. Number 34 is The Real Me by Natalie Grant. This is basically like a biography of her story. She suffered with an eating disorder growing up, and she's a Christian singer. This was okay, not one of my favorites. I gave it a 3-star. I felt like some of the details of her story were a bit graphic, especially for somebody who might be suffering with an eating disorder. It might be too much. It might be, I don't know. She just goes through a lot of things, and she's kind of like, oh, I tried this and I tried that and I tried this. And I was like, well, I know, you know, you can pretty much find anything on the internet nowadays, but like if somebody's just like starting to go through an eating disorder and looking for help, I don't know, in my mind I was like, well, what if they misinterpret this and they just end up getting more ideas instead of it helping them? And to me, it was less of her coming out of it and the scriptural and what God did kind of story, and more of this is what happened and all the things I did and how I did it. And I feel like testimonies need to be a lot less of that and not as detailed, because I think it can be damaging, too detailed. So that was not one of my favorites, but I gave it a 3-star. It's kind of weird to rate biographies and memoirs and stuff like that. But number 33 was Old School Life in the Same Lane. This is by Bill O'Reilly and Bruce Fernstein. This was another nonfiction. It's just kind of like the two of them going back and forth talking about like the old school kids and now the snowflakes of now. I'm not sure when this book was written. It wasn't as interesting as I thought it was going to be. It was kind of more like plain and simple, but it was an okay book. I got a couple laughs out of it, but it wasn't one of my favorites at all. Mommy, so, okay, and number 32, if I can, 30T, I don't even know what that is Don't Miss It by Reggie Joyner and Kristen Ivy. This was a very, very short little like Christian parenting, like it was basically just a book filled with like little quotes and like sayings on parenting type of thing. It was fine. 3 stars, very quick, very little thing, you know, pretty much just like basic stuff you already knew. 31, right after that, is Parenting Your 4-Year-Old by the same authors, Reggie Joyner and Kristen Ivy. This one was a little bit more elaborated than the last one. It was more than just little quotes. It had some more like developmental specific things for age 4, which I really liked. But it wasn't a long book either. I think this was right over 100 pages, also Christian nonfiction. So this one was fine, just not, you know, it wasn't anything amazing that stood out majorly to me. And then we have Murder, She Wrote, Close Up on Murder by, okay, on the book they have like Jessica Fletcher, which is the name of the character in the show, and Donald Bain, so I'm not sure, I'm assuming Donald Bain is the actual author. But that's number 30, and just 3 stars, just a basic, like, cozy mystery novel. Number 29, Know What You Signed Up For by Megan B. Brown. I also gave this 3 stars. This was fine, all right. I, you know, had a few, like, good things in it. This is a Christian nonfiction book by a military spouse. It is about how you can, like, actively pursue and still lead and go out and disciple while living the military life, where you are tossed around and having to change communities and churches and all these things every like 1 to 3 years practically. So it was fine. It was okay. I am also a military spouse, but I don't like the military, so there were some good things in this, but most of them were just kind of, there was some stuff that I disagreed with her on, but it wasn't like crazy big things, and it was only a few things here and there. But yeah, it was a decent book. Number 28 is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is a super popular book. This is the book that I picked for the overhyped book of the year on my end of the year book tag, because I just thought this book was meh. This was a fine book. There were things I liked about it. Obviously, it's not like way down on my list where it's like I hated this book. No, this was all right, but I did not see anything amazing about it. So I'm not really going to give a synopsis on this because everybody talks about this book. And number 27, this one's like a 3.5 stars, is Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. I definitely like this one more than Where the Crawdads Sing. This one just took me a really long time to get into. It wasn't until like halfway that I actually started to like the story. I felt like it was very like slow and long and drawing, and there was a lot of like marital conflict, and that bothers me in books because I feel like the majority of books just like hype on the fact that it's like, oh, our marriage is crumbling and marital conflict all the time. At least this year felt like a lot of my reading was that. I was getting tired of it. But the second half of this book really saved this book for me, and I really liked it. It is I kind of want to say a historical. I don't know if it would be historical fiction, but it goes back and forth between two timelines. The mother of these two girls basically was from Russia, and it goes back to her childhood going through and what her life was beforehand. And it's kind of like slow to get there because she finally starts to tell the story of her life to her girls, and they end up going back to Russia later on in the book. And I really liked how that one ended. So that was pretty good. And then the next one, number 26, also a 3.5 stars, was What Was the Vietnam War by Jim O'Connor. I was reading this one in preparation for my girls, also for like something to put alongside schooling in elementary, middle grade. This is one of those like who, what, where books, and this was pretty basic, pretty simple, pretty good. I honestly liked it. I'm not very good with history or remembering history stuff, and I felt like I took in more from this, so I hope that it will be the same for my daughters when they get to this age. And then at number 25 is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. I'm sorry if I'm saying that last name wrong. That's a weird last name. Stargirl, I feel like, was a really popular book like years and years and years ago. It was interesting. There's definitely some things, just because of my perspective on the world and everything, that I was like, this is weird, or I didn't agree with, but overall the whole like message of the book I thought was nice, and I thought it was cute and interesting, so it was, you know, a decent book. All right, and then number 24, I have The Wedding by Nicholas Sparks. This is actually the sequel type of thing. It's like a different story, but to The Notebook. So it's like Allie and Noah in The Notebooks, one of their daughters and her husband, and it's going through their marriage. And basically this whole book is about him, the husband of the daughter, fixing their marriage, like trying to repair and be a better husband for her. And it's a really cute story. You do not have to have read The Notebook. There are a few things that you may not fully understand, but it's not going to affect, like you'll get it because they pretty much tell you. I haven't read The Notebook, actually. I've seen the movie though, but I thought it was really cute and I liked it. Okay, and then at number 23, I have Gathering Blue by Lois Lowry. It's the author of The Giver. This is a companion novel. I'm wondering after this novel if the world is like the same or something and they kind of interconnect. I'm not sure. This was an interesting story though, and the more I read, the more I liked it. Kind of ended at a place that I didn't think it was going to end, and it didn't quite conclude as much as I would have liked it to, but I still enjoyed it. And then at number 22, I have Nancy Drew's The Secret of the Old Clock. This was a reread for me. This is the first Nancy Drew novel. This is by Carolyn Keene, I believe. Just like a middle grade mystery series, basically. Like if you know Murder, She Wrote, it's basically kind of like that, but for middle grade with a younger, like college age girl as the protagonist instead of an older lady. And then number 21, I have Aragon by Christopher Poloni. If my husband was here, he could tell me how to pronounce this name. But this was his book, and this was his recommendation for me this past year, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. It just felt a little bit slow to me at parts. My husband has told me that I will probably enjoy more as I go along in the series, so I am hoping to read the second one in the series this coming year, because it's also his recommended to me this year. He's like, I'm just gonna force you to read through these. I was like, I was already gonna continue, but Okay. All right, number 20 is 21 Great Leaders by Pat Williams. This basically just goes through 21 great leaders, some quotes, some like, it's got like a lot of good quotes in it, but it goes through a lot of like leadership attributes basically, and like what we can glean and learn from them in general. So I really liked that, even if like, obviously it doesn't like say, oh, if a leader, you know, did something awful, it's not trying to say like, oh, they can do no wrong. It's just taking, they did this right. This is like the leadership that they're known for. This is kind of like where they, you know, triumphed. And this is what we can learn from that and what we can take from that. And just kind of like combining all the aspects and stuff across the board of leadership. So that was pretty good. And I love quotes. So that had a lot of quotes in it. And then at number 19, I have Reimagine by Brent Crow, and this is another Christian nonfiction. This was not quite what I thought it was going to be. I think it's like reimagine what the world would look like if God got his way. I don't know. I thought it was going to be like more like, oh, we're going to talk all these like crazy like theories and stuff like that. But it was more just getting down to scripture and pretty basic, simple stuff of like, this is how it was supposed to be. And it was a decently good book. I enjoyed it, but I honestly have started to forget a lot about it at this point, so I don't have a ton to say. And then at number 18, I have Feels Like Family by Cheryl Woods. This is the third book in the Sweet Magnolias series, which is a contemporary romance series. They also have a Netflix show that they made of this series. I've enjoyed this series though. It's got very like low spice, I would say. I'm trying to remember what this one was like, because I feel like I read the first one and it was very little, and then I read the second one and there was a little bit more, and there might have been a little bit more in this one. I can't remember. I feel like the second one might have had the most, so I'm hoping that they stay very little, because if they get much more, I'm not going to continue to read this series, because I don't do a lot of spice in my novels. As long as I can like glide over it and it's not a lot and there's still like a plot, then I can deal with it. So that's number 18. And then at number 17, I have Dare to Discipline by Dr. James Dobson. This is basically just a nonfiction book about disciplining your children. So me and my husband went through this and reread this, and there was a lot of bad reviews on this. I very critically like went into this very like analytic type of mode, and I highlighted and underlined a lot of things and like wrote in the margins of this book a lot, but I ended up liking it. There was only like very little things that I was like, I'm not sure if I quite agree on that, but I feel like there was a lot of practical things, and honestly this book had a lot more statistics and studies and like science aspect to it than I thought it was going to have, especially with the reviews. So I really enjoyed that. So yeah, and that one I gave a 4 stars. So now we're on to our 4 stars. Number 16 is Roaring by Lindsay Duga. This is a fantasy romance. It is 1920s era with like mobster versus monster type of theme. This turned out to be a lot better than I thought it was going to be. As you can see, it's number 16 on my list. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one a lot more than I thought I would. And it is fantasy romance, and I love the romance in it, but like low to none spice. Very, very low on spice at all. Like, I was so happy about that. So, and number 15, also a 4 star, was Church Membership by Jonathan Lehman. This was just like a little, like, this is what church membership is about. This is why you should be a member at your church. Like, these are like, this is why it's important and stuff. And this did a really good comprehensive guide and went through scriptural reasons, and I really enjoyed it. And I think if you're like a member at a church, or you're thinking about being a member, it's great for everybody to like read and to understand. So definitely love that one. And then number 14, also a 4 star for me, was 1984 by George Orwell. This is a very talked about book, like the whole Big Brother and everything, dystopian novel. Very good. I don't know how to describe 1984, but I feel like most people know what 1984 is like about. It was good. I didn't love it, like, you know, there's a lot of things in it that I was like, you know what, I don't think this would really work because of so-and-so reason, but, I'm picky like that, so. Anyway, number 13 was The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. This was actually the last book I read of 2023. A very short comprehension little thing of his, but very heavy, very hard to understand. If you read The Abolition of Man, there were definitely some parts that I was like, I'm sorry, what? I'm gonna have to read that again. And I read it again. I was like, I'm not sure if I know what you're saying. But this was quite funny to me too, because he decided to do this whole, like, you know, like, I'm gonna be philosophical and all this stuff, and I'm gonna, you know, like how C.S. Lewis is. But he does it, and he starts this with the premise of attacking some, like, grammar Nazis, basically. And I was like, okay, C.S. Lewis, you're just gonna go on a rant about this, and you're gonna interconnect it, and half of the stuff we're not gonna know what you're talking about. It was pretty funny to me, though, because there were, like, definitely points that came out, you know, and some of, like, the long-winded things that you weren't, you know, understanding fully, you were like, this is, like, a full-on rant and tangent. And I kind of loved it, so. I think that was the only C.S. Lewis I read this year, too. So, yeah. And then number 12 on this list, we're getting so close, is Kiki's Delivery Service. This is by this person. I'm going to put her right there. Yeah, I'm going to butcher that. This was just a very cute, happy little tale, you know, not like scary, monstrous, evil, darkness, normal witch stuff. Just a very light and cute little book, and I enjoyed this. This was just very sweet. And then at number 11, I have The Little Prince, also by this person right here. I'm not going to try to butcher that name either. This is a children's classic, and this was my first year reading it, and this is one of the, I guess say children's or middle grade ones that I actually enjoyed this year, so very good, very cute little story. And then now we are at the final 10, my top 10 books, right? So the best 10 books of the year, of my year, at least. I didn't read every book, so. At number 10, I have The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto, and this is by Mitch Albom. I don't know really how to describe this book. It's basically about a man named Frankie Presto, and music is your narrator, and he goes through Frankie Presto's entire life, basically, and these magic strings from this guitar that he has, and kind of how they interstrand on having, like, life source in them or something. It's a very unique concept. It's very beautiful book. I listened to this on audiobook, and I would definitely recommend that because of the musical aspect to it. It had a lot of, like, lyrical, and there's a lot of different people throughout the book too, so hearing different people throughout the narration was really cool and fun. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I would. And then at number 9, I have The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, I think, Leroux or something. I enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I was going to. Emma here on Booktube talks about this book as, like, one of her favorite books, and ever since she started talking about it, I was like, okay, there's got to be something about this book. I should check it out, and I'm so glad I did. This is just, it's about the Phantom of the Opera, the ghost or phantom that lures over the opera house, and he is in love with this woman, this singer. I don't know, I mean, I feel like most people know what Phantom of the Opera is about. I'm now very intrigued to finally like watch it though, because I have never watched it. Alright, and at number 8, I have The Family God's Masterpiece by Helen D. Bogg. This was a very short book, also one I read at the beginning of the year, but a very good book. Just really like simple scriptural like stuff in it. There was a few things in it I think that were a little outdated, because I think this was written in the 50s or so, I want to say. But for the most part, like, it was pretty solid and dead on, and I really enjoyed it. And then number 7 is The Babylon Bee's Guide to Democracy by the Babylon Bee. This book was hilarious. This was definitely the funniest book I read all year, because this had me laughing out loud the entire year. I read it out loud to my husband, and so I was like narrating and doing funny voices and like acting out some stuff. And it was just a blast. I loved it, and I like want to reread it to different people to just see their reactions to certain things. Hilarious book. I loved this book. I'm like so glad I read this book. And then at number 6, a little bit of a change here, is Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls. This was my first time reading this beloved middle grade classic, and my dear goodness, you guys, this book made me bawl. I was not expecting how like much this would get to me, and it was also more graphic than I thought. This was an amazing book that I'm like really looking forward to rereading again, even though it wrecked me a little bit. So yeah. All right, and then at number 5, this is now my top 5 are all 5-star books. These are the only books I rated 5 stars this year. Number 5 is Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. This is a World War II story of oh my gosh, what's his last name? His name is Louis something. He was an Olympic runner, basically, and he, you know, was a soldier in World War II also. And this is just like his life story, with the majority of it being during the war and what he went through, because he got shot down in the middle of the ocean, survived on a raft with a couple buddies who did not all survive on the raft, made it to shore to find that they were on Japanese territory. So he got taken hostage and was a prisoner of war for a while until the war ended, basically, and then went back. And then it also gives a little bit of his end story and of finding God, and that was really cool that they kind of like didn't just end it with him like being found and like coming back from the war and stuff, that they kind of went a little bit farther into his story. I really enjoyed that. The majority of it is though in World War II, in the war zone, and what he went through, and some of these things in this book is sickening to listen to hear, to know that it happened, but I feel like it's so important for us to know. I would definitely recommend it. I think I was telling my husband, I was like, I think this is going to be one of those books that I add on to our like high school curriculum into the history, because I really want to add on a lot of books outside of textbooks into as many subjects as I can. All right, and number 4 on the list is Share Jesus Without Fear. This is by William Fay. It is a Christian nonfiction, also just about like sharing the gospel, basically. It was a very good, very convicting book, and also a very simple to read book. Like definitely one of the ones I would recommend to any and all Christians. I think it's really important. I think William Fay did a really good job of interweaving the whole how to share the gospel and encouraging to share the gospel, the importance of it, while also telling a little bit of his story without that being like overarching to the point of the book. Number 3 is a very tiny little book, the shortest book I read this year, and that is Narrow Gate, Narrow Way by Paul Washer. It is one of his sermons that was actually turned into book format, basically, and it is an amazing, amazing book. I'm actually rereading it this month for a little book club that I am doing, and I'm very excited about it. It was so good, so many great nuggets of wisdom. Definitely recommend. Just amazing, amazing. And number 2 is The Ever-Loving Truth by Vodi Bakum. Voddie Baucham is also a preacher. He, this book is basically, I think the longer version is The Ever-Loving Truth. Can Christianity thrive in a post-Christian culture? This was written back, I want to say like early 2000s, but there was still so much stuff that was so applicable to today. It definitely makes you as a Christian feel a lot less alone in some of your views and some of the things going on in the world today. And I really loved it. Voddie Baucham is such a great preacher, and he just has such great wisdom and nuggets in this book, and so scripturally sound and biblically sound. Just 10 out of 10 recommend, absolutely. And then for the number one, the best book of the year that I read, maybe, I don't know if, like, you know, if we were really, I feel like if I keep reading so many like Christian books, I might have to separate them in the year to come, because it feels kind of weird putting normal books with Christian books. But for my number one book this year, the one that just made me the happiest, that I'm like felt the best about and just loved in so many different ways, was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. This is a closed door romance, like just cute little rom-com, a friends to lovers. It is about a ballerina named Bree and a football star named Nathan, and they're best friends. And it's a romance, and I think you know what happens next. So it's so cute. This one just made me very happy. So happy. I read this in like a day. I wanted to reread it immediately, and it was a good book. So yeah, that is my books. All the books I read in 2023, from worst to best, and I'm glad we ended on a better note. It makes saying goodbye just, you know, a happier occasion. So I hope you like this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what your best and your worst book of the year was. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Have a great day, and hope you get lots of reading done. Bye.